Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton, and as normal, I'm here with Greg Matusak.
Hey, Kevin. I know we usually talk about like these new TV series, but I am just hooked, and I want no spoilers. There's this new show called The January 6th Hearings.
Oh,
Best TV I've seen all year. Don't tell me what happens.
Yeah, they're coming out with a new episode on Tuesday.
Oh, I'm super excited. Can you believe this show? How these writers get this stuff? It's amazing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's a little unbelievable for me. Also, Joe Syart, a.k.a. Producer Joe, is here. Hi, Joe.
How's it going, Kevin? I'm on the edge of my seat right now because I'm waiting for Roe v. Wade 2, the battle of the midterm elections, not pregnancies.
And I just want to say that I've known Joe for, I think, around 6 months, and this is the first time I've ever pronounced his last name right. And speaking of people that have names that can be pronounced many different ways, a very good friend of mine, a former student of mine in one of my writing classes, and we've also collaborated together on some projects, and a fine actor in his own right, Kenan Heppy, is here. Hi, Kenan.
Hey there. Thanks for having me. I cannot follow those jokes, guys. I'm sorry. They were too good. I'm just happy to be here.
and rounding out the roundtable is the producer and host of the popular podcast And Justice for Animals, Jennifer Peterson.
Thank you for having me back. And don't worry, Kenan, I don't have anything clever to say as well. So we're in the same boat. Thanks.
So this is a great group to discuss everything that's in the news this week. And we're going to start with the January 6 hearings, which we already referenced once. The big news as we start this podcast is that Steve Bannon has made it clear that he is willing to testify in front of the committee, although there's some question as to whether it's a sincere offer or not. There was some talk that he only wants to do it live on camera in front of the entire world without being pre-interviewed. And I'm not sure that's going to fly. But does anybody think that, one, Mr. Bannon is sincere in wanting to give truthful information to this committee? And does anybody think that, if true, could be a game changer?
Well, okay, so those are like two different questions.
Yes, they are.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
We have to step back. So he said he would do it like just days before his trial before he was about to be, let's not even say trial,
he's going on trial this week for refusing to testify. Yes.
So he said, and what's even better was that Donald Trump has supposedly written him a letter saying, you know what, my executive privilege with you, I forego it because you had such hard times. The thing was, he wasn't working at the White House at any of this time. So it was like a non-starter. So he was saying, you know what, I give permission, which we didn't need, but still puts Trump in the driver's seat. How many of you youngsters remember Iran-Contra and Reagan's testimony?
Yes.
I'm too young for that, Craig.
You're too young.
I'm way too young for that.
Reagan testified, and he used the term, I forget, or I do not recall, 144 times. Okay, Kevin's nodding his head.
Bannon's been watching this entire, he's been watching this whole thing. So he's seen every other person get up there and not plead the fifth. So you really think that he'll get up there and do that? I mean, we've seen the ones on tape who've been pleading the fifth who look like complete idiots. Like they come off just looking terrible. He's got an ego.
He can take the fifth. He can't claim executive privilege, but he can take the fifth. That's right. We'll find out. First of all, he might think that they're going to allow him to premiere live in front of the cameras, which the committee is not going to do because nobody would put a witness on the witness stand that they don't know what they're going to say. And this may just be a PR stunt or some type of power play. They are doing another hearing on Tuesday, and my understanding is that somebody from the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys is going to be testifying. Anybody know about that?
The focus on Tuesday's hearing will be the coordination, the convergence, as Representative Kinzinger has been calling it, the convergence of these groups like Oath Keepers and Proud Boys all coming together, and how Trump's call to arms, whether they were tweeting out orders or where he was saying, okay, you need to do this on this day, come to town. So it's going, hopefully, from what my understanding, you're right, it's going to be a member of one of these groups. And they're going to say, yes, we were talking to people inside his group. And whether it was, I don't think it was Steve Bannon, it was Roger Stone, who was in contact with a lot of these people, who was working as an intermediary.
Yes.
Intermediary. So that's going to be super bad for Trump. I think that's the legal term. Bad. Yeah.
Exactly.
Other than these hearings, which are fun to watch, other stuff in the news, Joe Biden issued an executive order on abortion. Now, we haven't done a podcast, I don't think, since the SCOTUS ruling on Dobbs came down. And I know, Jennifer, you had a lot that you wanted to say at that time. I'm going to throw to you first, Jennifer, because you probably have so much bottled up that you want to get out.
Oh, boy. I mean, it's been so bottled up that it's been a couple of weeks. It's been 2 weeks, right, since this went down. It feels like it's all been a blur to me because it feels like it's not real, and yet it is real.
I know that you obviously were very moved by this in the negative way,
Angry.
but I also know that you're not just sitting around and moping about it, that you're taking action. Is there anything that you want to talk about on this podcast about what you're willing to do?
Okay, first of all, we need to share our stories, because I'm pretty sure I'm the only one here on this panel that's actually gone through an abortion. And I think it's important to talk about as women, to tell our stories. And I was in a very abusive relationship, and I found out I was pregnant. I had the choice. I was able to make that choice. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right choice, because I had to get out of this relationship that was very abusive. And I knew that this guy would have been a horrible father to any child.
You're in an abusive, and I would imagine, possibly a physically abusive relationship. And then you find out that you're pregnant. Now, there are people on the other side of the debate that would say, well, a life is a life, and you should have still carried this to term. But that would have tied you legally and in many other ways to a person who was abusing you. You wanted to end this relationship. You wanted to move on with your life. Having a child with that person would have just tied you to this person for 18 to 25 years.
Or beyond that. I knew that. I knew that in my gut. I knew that. It was like, God, I mean, I literally, as soon as I found out and I was still with him, I knew that this was the way it was going to have to be for my sanity.
Yeah.
For, I love children, but no, it wasn't a hard choice. I said earlier it was difficult, but quite frankly, it was the right choice. I know it.
And another thing that you've mentioned to me is that you're open to helping women whose states have now made abortion illegal. You're open to helping them if they need to travel to another state, such as California.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How would you support them?
Well, I've already put it out there on social media, as a lot of my friends have in California, but, that will offer lodging, reach out and, we can offer lodging, whatever it is. This is also new to all of us. We never thought we'd be in this position, but absolutely 1,000% I'm there. And I know hundreds of other women who are there to help anyone who needs to come to California to take care of that.
Andrea Mitchell on NBC made a point the other day that I had not heard before. Maybe somebody else here had heard it, but she pointed out that if a woman has a natural miscarriage, there are people that could suspect that she had an abortion and can sue her. And then she has to prove that she didn't abort it.
Right.
And now,
welcome to Missouri. That's happening. That's where it's at in many states right now.
Of course, it would be difficult for either side to prove, but people are going to get caught up in the extensive, legal fees and court battles, and people may go bankrupt just trying to prove that they had a miscarriage, and as opposed to an abortion. It's going to be crazy.
But guys, as the female talking on here, they can say that this is about babies and saving babies and all that, but it's absolute crap. It's trying to control women. It's not about lives, because these are the same people. They want to force children to have babies just to be able to pay for these children. They want food stamps. They need to go on welfare. They need any help at all. Then they're shamed. Shame on you for asking for help. So it's a bunch of crap.
When you say controlling women, I hear that a lot. And I just, because I've heard it framed sometimes like men trying to control women, but there are a lot of women on the other side advocating for. So do they actually think it's women trying to make policy to control all women? Because there are a lot of women who are for this.
Let me answer that, or let me give my opinion on that.
Good question.
I think you're both right. Jennifer, I think when you said it's about power, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you mean at the level of the elected leaders. the people in power.
Mhm.
I think the people who vote for them,
Yes.
for the most part, they believe the other thing. They believe they're saving lives. They've been brainwashed into thinking this makes them good Christians, good evangelicals. And, when I tried to make sense of this whole thing, and in fact, I said this the other day to Jessica, I said, just imagine you're at a gas station and a spark happens and 2 cars catch on fire. One of them has a 10-year-old girl in it and the other one has 5 babies in it. Which one are you going to try to save? Most people would say the babies, right? That's how they see politics now. So this young girl, everyone would agree that it's a tragedy that a 10-year-old girl got impregnated by a relative, or
Raped.
for that matter, by anybody.
Raped. We're not going to say impregnated.
Raped by a relative, yes.
Thank you.
But they would say, yes, that's a tragedy, but we're saving 1 million babies. Unfortunately, she's a casualty of war because we're saving 1 million babies. I truly believe that's how the people that vote for these idiots, how they make sense of it.
Okay. Yes. I actually agree with that, Kevin. I mean, but we also know that the majority of America, I think it's like the numbers are always kind of shifting, but it's always the majority. I think it's like 6 out of 10 or 7. I think it's 6 out of 10 voters right now, or no, 6 out of 10 Americans are for a woman's right to have an abortion if that's what she wants. I think it's 7 out of 10 are for, I was just looking at these numbers prior to the show, are for same-sex marriage, which I think is the next thing they're going after. So basically the voters, what we have right now is a Supreme Court that is not representing at all who we are as a nation. That scares the crap out of me.
They don't care about public
opinion. I know they don't.
Because they believe that public opinion will change over time. They believe that with the new normal of abortion being illegal, that pro-life will become more popular.
In some ways, once gay marriage became legal, it became much, much more accepted.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, and it became, and you're right, it is up to 77% by the latest poll. But remember, 20 years ago, that was the wedge issue. And it was only about 25%, 30% that thought that it should be legal.
Right.
And
I think the geopolitics is also important, like where on average around the world, what's the reigning policy, right? Like
America's pretty wrapped up in itself.
but there's a lot of cross-border travel, and you see people online, you're exposed to many more ideas. I mean, abortion is legal in so many developed. I personally don't see women forgetting anytime soon what they just lost, and I think there's going to be a long fight. I don't see people.
I think men can't forget either. This is the important thing.
Right.
Men can't forget either. Men have to be there with us.
Yeah.
How did women get the vote? We didn't have the vote. Men helped us get the vote. So men are part of this, huge part of this. And also, if a woman's forced to have a baby, guess who's helping to support that baby for the rest, of their life? I mean,
that's right. I don't want to do that.
It's insanity. I'm sure you don't. I mean, it's insanity that it's like, when are they going to connect all the dots? And who's going to take care of all these babies? And we have hundreds of thousands of kids right now in the foster care system. They don't care about that.
I wear socks that have holes in them. I don't want to buy a new pair of socks.
Thank you.
For me, let alone a new person.
Biden this week signed an executive order. Although people have been asking the White House to do things like allowing abortions to be provided on federal property, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
It would be. Literally, I read that and I said, okay, let's do it. Oh, we can't do that.
The White House would say, look, there's only so much he could do legally. Jennifer, you and I actually had this conversation in private where, yes, we would love the president to be able to sign an executive order and make things, right again. But the lawyers say he can't. I mean, he can sign anything, but is it going to hold up in court? Is it going to be contested and then thrown out by the Supreme Court and maybe make things worse? There are a couple of things that could get even worse. Let's say, for instance, that there's a loophole in a few states where the federal government could offer abortion services or offer medicated abortions on federal land or on military property. Let's say they could do that. It wouldn't take long for those legislatures to write laws that would make that illegal, make it possible to prosecute someone the minute they step off that federal land. Okay. So it sounds like a fix, but ultimately there are ways that you, can make things worse, because when those laws are passed, they're going to find other ways to punish people if they go to another state and try to come back to their job or to their family after having an abortion or having participated in an abortion.
That just sounds like that would make the United States crumble, right? Like if someone goes from Kansas to Oregon and smokes weed and comes back.
It is crumbling.
It may crumble.
But I mean, like you can go, because there are many things in many states that are legal and only, like, that means California could prosecute someone who went to Texas and like fired a weapon or did something with a gun that you can do in Texas, smoking weed in Oregon and then going back to Oklahoma.
Right.
Yes.
That's against the whole states' rights issue. I mean, that is literally anthem.
So yes, you could make things worse because you could heighten the whole states' rights versus federalism divide.
Yep. Here we go, people.
Yeah.
It's going to like the worse. Iceberg. I feel like, watching Titanic and that iceberg, it hits the ship hits the iceberg and everyone's like still dancing.
Well, let me point out something that I think that the Biden administration could do that, again, very few people have talked about. At least I haven't heard it. They've talked about, for a long time, they've talked about changing the filibuster so that 50 votes plus the vice president's vote could affect legislation in the Senate, right? Now, a lot of people would say, that sounds great, but Joe Manchin and maybe Bob Casey in Pennsylvania aren't going to go along with it because they're pro-life, okay? But what people forget is Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski screwed up massively when they voted to confirm Brett Kavanaugh, who they were fooled by, or so they would tell us, and Amy Coney Barrett, and even, in my opinion, when they voted to confirm Neil Gorsuch. Those votes changed women's rights. And Susan Collins, who's supposedly pro-choice, and Lisa Murkowski, who's supposedly pro-choice, they can stand up all day long and say, hey, I was fooled. I made a mistake. Well, you know what? Now you owe us a vote in the Senate. You owe us a vote to side with the Democrats, if that's who's doing it, to change the filibuster law for this one issue.
Right.
And by the way, the filibuster is not a law. It's a rule. It's not a law.
I thought Joe Biden did say that. I thought he mentioned that in the last.
But he didn't mention Murkowski and Collins.
Oh, no, he did not call them out. That would have been nice.
And so everybody says, well, it could technically be done, but we don't have the votes on the Democratic side to do it. And I'm pointing out is we do have the votes. You just have to put pressure on those two people to come over. And maybe we'll also get a Manchin. Maybe we'll also get Bob Casey. Now that we've gone through a list of things that are wrong with the world, I think we all agree that we need to find someone who could right the ship of this world. And is that someone Jon Stewart in 2024?
So Jon Stewart, there was a recent article in Politico discussing Jon Stewart. And we could talk about the parallels between President of Ukraine, President Zelensky. Thank you very much. This is what happens when you throw to me first. And how Zelensky was a former actor. And in fact, if you guys don't know, Zelensky played in a TV show where he was a high school social studies teacher who then became president of the country.
Perfect.
Okay? And it was a beloved TV show with, charm and about, vision. And after the show ended, he was like, I think I'd make a great president. And you know what? He is. He's a great president. He's standing up for his country. He's doing the right thing. And we could use that as an example. I'm against Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart's awesome. He spent the past 8-9 years developing lobbying for good causes. He works on his wife's animal shelter. Awesome. He's great. He's doing the right thing. However, he's also what we call a cult of personality, not just a Living Color song. Joe knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
The fact is, what we saw in Trump, where we would see in Jon Stewart, here's a guy who says what he means. He would get the job done. None of this politician stuff, outsider stuff, but he'd be working for us. That's not what we need. We need someone who actually knows how to get stuff done. Otherwise, we have another Joe Biden who says things like, well, I really would like to help on this abortion thing, but maybe if you guys vote harder. This is not my rally around Joe Biden week, for the record.
If you can have a personality like Zelensky, who is a great leader, as you said, and then a terrible one such as Trump, why are you lumping Jon Stewart in the same category that Trump will be in? How do you know he's not a Zelensky? And if you can see the outcome be anywhere on the spectrum, why does being known on TV have anything to do with it?
Some people were born with greatness, some people have achieved greatness, and some people have greatness thrust upon them. Zelensky had greatness thrust upon him, okay? Whether it was the war, whether he was put in a situation where he rose to the occasion, okay? Because otherwise he'd be a pretty okay president, all right? And we all know that.
Well,
okay.
let me jump in there because, I'm going to preface what I'm about to say is I'm a huge Vladimir Zelensky fan. He's clearly a man of the times. His courage is beyond anything that anybody can describe.
Yep.
And clearly he's a great wartime leader for Ukraine.
And that's
that
what I was
said,
saying.
Before this war broke out, there were a lot of problems in Ukraine, and he was not solving them, including massive corruption. So it's not like he was the John Kennedy of his time there. It's just that when the war broke out, then he became the Winston Churchill of his country.
I would want to give Vladimir Zelensky a bit of allowance, right? I mean, there's corruption in Ukraine, but we have a ton of corruption here in the U.S. And, you're either, if you're going to say that Zelensky might have been not so great a president before the war simply because he didn't solve the corruption, it's like, well, is Biden or anyone who came before him a bad president because they didn't rid the U.S. of corporate interest, corruption, NRA corruption, or whatever? And then the second part of that is,
let me get that first part first. Okay, I don't think he was a great president because of a lot of those things. The Ukraine was not in a real power position, and you're right. There were lots of corruption issues, and the fact of the scandals with the phone call and things like this. There were all sorts of issues with his presidency, which he was a fine president, but he was not the profile and courage that we see now.
And you don't think Jon Stewart could rise to the current occasion?
It's not a question of him rising to this. It's the question of us as Democrats. It's us as the people. We saw what happened with the Republican Party. It's crumbling now. They all focus now on one person instead of the party, okay? You didn't see this with Reagan. When Reagan left, and even when Reagan was alive, you never saw this. Trump took all that away, okay? Because he was the outsider. He was the rule breaker. He was going to get things done. We're going to see the exact same with Jon Stewart. John's going to bring people into the party from the far progressive left, and he is going to try to get things done. And there's going to be the Jon Stewart Democrat and what will be known as dinos.
I kind of disagree with that. I mean, I really like Jon Stewart. I don't think the Democrats would do that. I don't think we would create some demagogue like they have with Trump. I just don't think so. Our history shows that we haven't done that yet. And Jon Stewart, I think it's funny that we're talking about this as if he's really running, because I honestly don't think he is. I mean, I think he'd be crazy too, because I think it's it's a hard job, right? And it ages you. And he's always talking now about how he looks terrible. He is. He always said, I look so old. I mean, why would he run for president? Age him another 20 years. So I don't think he's going to. However, what I'm looking for is someone who can bring in more Democratic voters, get people excited.
What does it mean for us that we're all talking about who could run when normally the incumbent runs, right? I feel like we're in big trouble if we're even talking about this.
Joe,
what's up, Joe?
Joe, what do you say?
Well, Zelensky seems to be almost the exception rather than the rule. Like, how many times have celebrities come into politics and it's really worked out? And like, look at it. We're deciding who of these television personalities would be best for this. And I mean, not that it's bad. Like Kenan was saying, there's nothing inherently that wouldn't make them a good president potentially. But I don't know if looking to our entertainment is necessarily the way. And I'm a guy that could easily vote for The Rock if he went for president.
Here's the thing. There's no reason that someone from the entertainment field, just like someone from the medical field or the legal field or an accountant, there's no reason that they can't get into politics and become very successful at it. The presidency, however, is not a starting job. But I'll tell you that there is one television personality who I think would have been a man for our times if he was still around, but unfortunately isn't. Al Franken.
Yeah. Yeah. My mother-in-law just asked, she said, wouldn't it be great if he came back? And I was like, he's not coming back.
The Democratic Party could use him now. I'll say that. Hey, let's move on because we were talking about corruption. And Joe, this leads to I know you've been sitting waiting for us to bring up this topic, which happened in the world of professional wrestling. Joe, why don't you run from there?
It was actually, I believe, the last episode we put out where I was talking with one of my co-hosts from a wrestling fandom about the then emerging Vince McMahon scandal. And at that point, it was only, I think, 3 million in cover-ups and NDAs getting out. Just this week, Wall Street Journal back at it again. The number is up to 12 million. The accusations
paid in hush money.
Yes. Supposedly out of his own pocket, which clearly makes it better than if the company does it. But you guys not being wrestling fans, what have you heard about the story? How do you feel about it? Because like I said on that episode, I'm worried that people are going to look at this as a wrestling story, going to kind of get swept under the rug. It was almost in danger of that until this one. Jennifer, why don't you tell us first? Because I equated it to being in the entertainment field and how it's weird that wrestling fans are almost looking past it. When I look at it and I'm like, those are serious accusations that anybody else would be done if that came out.
Oh, interesting. But you're sort of upset that the reaction isn't bigger within the wrestling community. And is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he's been on TV multiple times since then. He has gotten ovations. Apparently, from what I've heard, they're selling Vince McMahon shirts at the merchandise stand. I think the story overall is disgusting. It's not surprising, but just the raw details are coming out now. And the fact that he is still in power, the fact that it's almost not affecting his life at all. I want to see, as regular people, how have you encountered this story in the mainstream and what are your opinions?
Well, thank you for asking. And as a woman, when I read it, I was just like, here we go again. I mean, as a woman, I didn't connect it as much to the wrestling as just to entertainment and men in power and lots of money and what they can do to, silence others. So for me, I didn't look at it as, oh, this is the wrestling world. I looked at it as this is the entertainment world. And then I think of like the Harvey Weinsteins and I think of the Donald Trumps. I mean, he falls right into that. The hush money and or just brushing it off. So, yeah, I mean, $12 million, lots of people being silenced. I mean, I hate to say it, but as a woman, we've been hearing these stories like forever. I wish things would change. When Harvey Weinstein went to prison, that was huge. That was friggin' huge. Jeffrey Epstein, same thing, so we're seeing accountability finally, but it takes a while. So I hear a story like that and I go, I wonder if this guy's going to end up in prison because that might be the next step. I don't know.
I think all of this ties back to where we are just as a country right now. And we started with the pro-life versus abortion issue. We've talked a little bit about Donald Trump. I think it's about moral relativism, which I think is corroding the soul of this country. Because what it's become is, if he's my guy or my woman, I'm willing to give them a pass on doing things. People always said about Trump, well, I guess I didn't really like the way he treated women. And I didn't like all the things he said, but he was better than Biden. Therefore, I was going to vote for him anyways. The problem is you don't have the same moral relativism on both sides. When a politician like Al Franken got into trouble, he was forced out of office. Now, I think it was too quick, and I have some issues about that. A lot of other Democrats do too. But Democrats got rid of that problem. The same thing with Elliot Spitzer. The same thing with Andrew Weiner. No, Bill Clinton was allowed to finish his term. That's true. But for the most part, Democrats excise these people, in my opinion, sometimes before they've been proven to have done what the charges are. But Democrats do not have the same moral relativism that Republicans do. And frankly, this thing about Vince McMahon, first of all, I don't really care what the wrestling community is because present company excluded, Joe. I don't have a lot of respect for people who are avid wrestling fans. And I truly do mean present company excluded.
I might sound like an ignorant question, but are people required to take the hush money?
No.
There was an NDA signed as well. So I think it was money that came with the NDA.
So they are agreeing to be silent. They aren't being silenced.
Well, that's true. But
no, what do you mean?
You're a person. You worked in this organization. You feel that you were sexually molested, sexually harassed. You're ready to sue them, and then they come to you and they start negotiating a deal. And at a certain point, the money is right. At a certain point, it's not worth it for you to go to court, to have your reputation dragged through the mud in a trial and potentially lose. So they say, I could walk away with $250,000, or I could try to sue Mr. McMahon in court. And not only might I lose, but I might have to pay his legal fees. So at a certain point, they say, okay, I'm going to walk away with the $250,000 because to a lot of people, that's big money. And to get that, they have to sign the NDA.
And that's really a great question, because there's one part that's the money, right? And then there's the other part that goes along with it saying you should. Now, I don't know that all the details in this particular situation, but I know with hush money, a lot of the times it's the hush money and then you'll get to keep working. You'll still be able to have a life. There's a lot of threats that go, it's not just, we'll write you a check and everything is good. It's the check goes along with threats. And I'm not talking again this particular, but other, look, we have a history of
what's the
politicians and famous people writing hush money. So,
it's the old, mafia joke of nice restaurant you have here. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it. It's the same thing. Nice career you got here. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it.
Yes.
And Vince McMahon is very good at covering up his indiscretions. If you look at the amount of scandals that the WWE has faced that people know about, like they had a ring boy scandal in the 80s where teenage boys were getting sexually assaulted and sexually harassed by members of the WWE. You had Jimmy Snuka, whose girlfriend died under questionable circumstances. Jimmy Snuka never faced any kind of prosecution for it. Vince McMahon, he got past steroids. He was sued by the federal government. He has such a good lawyer. He's just used to paying his problems away, and it works 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
That's really insane. But I think that says so much more also about money on top of the terrible things that these people are doing.
It's his own hubris, though, that he feels like he can get away with these things. And I gave him money. They're fine. I took care of it.
However, again, this might be super ignorant, but in today's current climate, it doesn't seem like there would be so much pushback for allegations if someone wanted to speak up. Is it not so much more welcome these days for anybody going through who's being sexually harassed? Or is it?
We just had Roe v. Wade overturned. What do you think?
I would say,
no.
There's an argument to be made that maybe for some people becoming a whistleblower, like Cassidy Hutchinson, you can do it and still have a life. And of course, that still remains to be seen what's going to happen with somebody like her. But there are other whistleblowers that have tremendous fallout, and it does ruin their career. There are women and men who sue for sexual harassment and come out relatively unscathed, maybe an emotional scar that they'll carry with them for the rest of their life, but maybe also they get some money out of it, and it's well-deserved because they had to walk away from a great job because they were being harassed. But there are other people whose careers and their lives are destroyed by this. Wow. So is it any different than the 80s? Maybe for some people, maybe for others, it's worse.
We can talk about like Paula Jones would be a great example of this. Okay.
Right.
And Kevin knows who I'm talking about. But for you kids, Paula Jones was one of the women who accused President Clinton of sexual abuse. And he was guilty. I mean, he was guilty. But everybody turned on her. They did settle, but she was one of the most famous people. One of her ex-boyfriends tried to sell nude pictures of her to Penthouse magazine, and that whole thing went to litigation. She ended up having to do celebrity boxing. And was it worth it? Did she take down the most powerful man in the country? Not really.
Well, I hope we can do something as a culture to help people not feel like they need to sign these terrible things. You know, like how can we create a system where people feel like they don't have to sign?
Here's what you could do. It's a very simple fix. Pass a law that makes NDAs non-enforceable.
Love it.
Okay? Because the rest of the incentive is still there. I'm Vince McMahon. You're accusing me of sexual harassment. You're threatening to take me to court. I'm going to pay you this much to make the case go away. The woman, or for that matter, the person, I shouldn't say woman, it could happen to anyone, can still say yes or no, but they're not put in a position of having to sign an NDA that's legally binding. If the Congress or if a state legislature wanted to take that action, they could, but they don't want to.
So you mean they could still agree to take money to not sue them for it, but they can still talk about it?
Yeah. NDAs are only enforceable because legally they're enforceable. You just say that's illegal or that's not enforceable anymore, or under these circumstances.
Under those circumstances,
you're allowed to
maybe
break
intellectual
an agreement.
Property. Yeah.
If a crime has been committed, there you go.
That's a good idea.
Okay, I'll start working on it. Hey,
I like it, Kevin.
We've been going along, and we wanted to talk about some lighter stuff, like what we've been watching in the entertainment world this week. So I'm going to throw it out there. Does anybody want to bring up something that they've been watching and enjoying?
I just started watching Blackish. Thank you, Disney. I can't believe it's taken me this long. I think the show is like 7 or 8 years old, and I can't believe I've not seen this show before. And this is one of the dumbest things I've said. Maybe I wasn't its target audience, but I should be. In fact, everyone should watch this.
It's a good family comedy.
It's not only such a good family comedy, but there were so many things like where the father and I'm like, I do that. That's just like me, which is such a dumb thing to say because he's a dad, just like me. And this is like at the end of the show where they go, oh, well, I guess the moral is dads are all alike no matter what color they are. Well, of course it is. And I can't believe I have to think stupid things like that. But it's a really funny show and it's well written and it's great.
So, Greg, are you totally binging this show and are you going to disappear for about a week and a half?
I've watched the first 3 seasons in about a week and a half. And each season is like 26 episodes.
I don't know how you do it. I just binge watched my first thing ever this weekend. It was The Offer on Paramount, the fictional series about the making of the Godfather movies. Mm-hmm. There's only 10 1-hour episodes, and it took me all weekend, and I felt spent. I don't know how people can watch season after season after season of a show.
Kevin, was it worth it?
I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. But I would have to say, if I were reviewing it, I would have to be very harsh. I believe that they made up a ton of stuff. I looked up a few facts, and they would move things in time to make them more dramatic. Like they took the assassination of one mafia guy who was involved tangentially in the making of this movie, and they moved it up 2 years so that it happened on the night of filming, when in fact he was shot like 2 years later. That kind of stuff.
Terrible. That's terrible.
And a lot of other things that they did that you go, well, that didn't really happen, but it was still compelling fiction.
Well, I just watched a really fun movie called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And it's Nick Cage playing Nick Cage. It's the weirdest concept ever for a movie. I like Nicolas Cage. And I thought, well, this is going to be either really good or really bad. And to his credit, he pulled off playing himself. I mean, it is a weird
satire.
It's satire, and it goes into some really strange places. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Is it a Charlie Kaufman film?
No,
No,
It's
you're
not
thinking of
Charlie
when he
Kaufman.
did adaptation.
Right. Well, I thought he plays himself, and this so far you're giving me a Charlie Kaufman pitch. Go on.
I know, but I don't think this was written by Charlie Kaufman. I don't. I could be wrong. It's just fun. I mean, and all of a sudden he's involved in a kidnapping, but you get all of these Nick Cage bits from other movies. And I don't think any other actor could have pulled this off, quite frankly. But he's so out there and he's so willing to take risk and make fun of himself. That's what it is. Hey, maybe Nicolas Cage is the one that needs to run for president. You guys?
I would definitely vote for that.
Okay. I think we figured it out. My mind was going and then like who? And then, Nick Cage, because he rescues people and he's self-deprecating and he's goofy and maybe we encourage him to run for president.
Is there a classic Nick Cage freak out?
There are at least 4. And there are at least 4. There's a wax dummy Nick Cage. There's Nick Cage. No, and also one of my favorite parts, he's talking to this guy about his 3 favorite movies of all time. And Nick Cage is asking this guy what his 3 favorite movies are. And one of the favorite movies, and I've told this to people for the past several years now, he mentions, and I fell off my couch, Paddington 2. Thank you very much. Paddington, which is one of the best films I think ever made. And it's literally referred to in the movie. And I go, I love the writer.
And that's one of your favorite movies?
Have any of you guys seen Paddington 2?
No.
I saw the first one, and I felt that the first one answered all my Paddington questions.
No, it has not.
I didn't feel like there should be a sequel.
It's funny that the funny one is the sequel, not,
Okay, first of all, Hugh Grant.
Granted, I hate origin stories, so
I can't even. Look. It's all I'm saying is you guys all have to watch Paddington. Hey, look, Joe. One of the past episodes, you had to watch West Side Story, the remake, and then you had to talk, and you loved it. I am now saying you have to see Paddington 2.
Oh, I'm on Paddington 2 duty now.
All right.
I thought Kevin was going to tell us that he wrote on Paddington 2.
No. But I am going to point out, just to bother Greg, that I have met and do know Charlie Kaufman. But
wow,
he hates when I name drop.
Flex.
I felt I was being so suave by throwing in like obscure, right? Like, oh, look at me, I'm an intellectual and shit.
Somebody brought up Westworld.
Yes, I actually watched the first 2 episodes of season 4 of Westworld today. Kind of a futuristic show, sci-fi about a theme park with computer hosts. And it's an interesting take on AI and the way almost that humans live. That's the best description I can give without spoiling anything. Highly recommend the show, but season 4 is kicking off beautifully, and episode 3 is tonight.
Season 1 was incredible. The pilot of Westworld is incredible. Some of the greatest acting in there. When you see that, I don't want to give anything away in the spoilers, but
well, I think Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad is in season 4, right?
Yep, he's back. Ed Harris is in there.
Oh, he was in season 3. Oh God, you guys. 3. Oh dear, I haven't seen season 3 then. Time to go back.
Well, speaking of science fiction, if you're willing to stretch out and watch a foreign project, you might want to check out Dark. It's on Netflix, so it's free if you have Netflix. And it is so well done. It's like a mystery sci-fi thriller. And I can't really talk too much about what it's about because that gives some of it away. But I've just never seen such a grounded science fiction story that is so grounded in the reality of the characters. And the acting is so good. The score is good. The cinematography is incredibly beautiful. It's just really an amazing piece of art. And it's very, very entertaining. And yeah, I can't even talk about the sci-fi concept because I might give some of it away. But regarding what the story is about, I have never seen this subject matter done as well as Dark does it.
And what platform is that on? Dark?
Netflix.
Okay, I've heard of it. Okay.
I'll add one more since we're going late. HBO just added The Raid 2. Joe knows what I'm talking about. It's an Indonesian film, and it's a sequel to, of course, The Raid, which is a classic. But the best part, and the only reason I mention it, is I'm a huge fan of these kind of action films. But it's an Indonesian film. For some reason, HBO has it, and it's only dubbed in Spanish.
Oh, man.
And then you can get English subtitles. So it's this Indonesian film that you're now watching in Spanish and get with English subtitles. It's so bizarre to watch because I've seen it actually in the original Indonesian, and I'm like, this is so trippy to listen to and watch.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. If you watch Dark, you definitely want to just have the English subtitles and
right. It's in German, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in German. But I'm sure there's an English dub. But don't do that. Watch the original version. Just read the subtitles.
Right. Sub, not dub. As my kids always say.
Yeah, sub, not dub. Yeah.
Well, if Dark is in German, I know what I'm going to be watching with my lovely bride this coming week because she speaks fluent German and she loves foreign stuff. So,
does she translate for you?
Sometimes.
Actually, they didn't really say
dramas.
That.
No,
so
I'm
romantic.
on my own during dramas.
So romantic.
Well, listen, everybody, we've gone long. I would love to continue chatting with you. This has been so much fun, but of course, it will be much shorter when Joe does his magic and starts cutting this thing up. Thank you, Joe, for doing that. And we want to thank everybody for listening. If you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and check us out on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. And don't forget to share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And also, if you want to chat with us between shows, most of us are in a group called Open Fire Politics and Entertainment, and you can just join that group. It's an open public group on Facebook, and you can come in and talk about whatever you'd like, or just join in on other people's threads. With that, Greg Matusak, what do you have on tap for the January 6th hearing this week and for the rest of the week?
Well, the rest of the week, I'm actually just checking right now. I'm locking down the nickcageforpresident.com website.
Yay!
If I don't, and then I'll be able to sell it for big bucks.
Yay.
And whatever variation. And then I'm going to start the t-shirts. Things like, do ya think? Or,
well, let's go all out and make it Cage Stewart 2024.
And we'll call it like the Cage match. And we'll
I love
reference all their movies, like Leaving Las Vegas, heading to DC.
I'm loving this. I'm loving it. Let's do it.